What's up, party people? So this is going to be a long one. I just dropped this giant stack of papers off at the courthouse in Honolulu. And basically, I got an email from opposing counsel the other day with a proposed finding of facts. They called it a finding of facts. Now, these facts could not have been more disingenuous or false overall. So what I did was I made a response to the finding of facts, and I'm going to be reading the entire finding of facts and the response to the finding of facts that I've submitted to the courthouse down in Honolulu. It's this whole thing. This took me like an entire day to put together. It took me another day to get it printed at Kinko's and get it to the courthouse. And then once I get to the courthouse, they're like, it's not conformed properly. You have to like stab it with these little, pokers to make it like one solid unit. I mean, the whole thing, this is just such a drag, and it's taking time off work, taking mental energy, everything else. But I have promised, as part of my strategy, to continue to make this insane operation completely public, because Mrs. Garcia, Miss Jackleen Grace Garcia, is doing the maximum amount of harm to my children that she can do in the form of extreme parental alienation. I've been documenting it now on YouTube for 4 years, 5 years almost. And I've been documenting it in courthouses in Oregon, California, and Hawaii now as well for 5 years. And it's absolutely absurd to me that somebody who has no criminal record, no litigation with any other third party anywhere in the world would be not allowed to see his own children based on the say-so of just one person. All right, so here's the document here. I'm just going to read it out loud. Bunch of legal stuff at the beginning, who it is, what the process is, who the judge is, different processes and procedures that have already occurred. Let's see. So in his motion and declaration for post-decree relief filed August 25th, 2020, father requested modification of legal, physical custody and visitation because Mrs. Garcia needs punishment for violating visitation orders repeatedly for 3 years. I point out that this is completely taken out of context. Ms. Garcia has been violating visitation orders for more than 4 years. That context is vital in understanding what I stated in the hearing. Again, I wouldn't be calling for a punishment of somebody if they weren't actively and intentionally violating court orders. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I just want to see my kids, and she makes it impossible by every means possible. She says, I allow the supervised visits, but only with like this one little tiny set of supervisors, the most expensive ones. Anyway, let's see. Enforcement of custody order entered March 30, an order referring to question of criminal contempt to the appropriate agency, an order directing mother to reimburse father for legal fee expenses incurred, and an order requiring mediation, and an order for a social study on the custody and or visitation issues raised in the motion. Father also orally renewed his prior request to terminate his child support obligation. Once again, this is completely taken out of context. I have been stuck in litigation, and my children have been abused with extreme parental alienation by the defendant for more than 4 years now. Moreover, the children have not seen anyone on the paternal side of their family other than their father, and only for brief stints, in over 6 years. So we're talking about the children have not had access to their grandparents, uncles, aunt, cousins, anybody on my side of the family in 6 years. And they're going to pretend like I'm the problem here. It's absolutely absurd. And keep in mind, I have no criminal record of any kind. Nothing. I've got a couple parking tickets. I have no other history of litigation. I had one small claims run in with a landlord like 20 years ago. And that is it. That's it for my entire legal record. In her motion and decree for post-decree relief filed November 16, 2020, mother requested father pay for supervised visits in full. And her motion in Lamine, I don't even know what Lamine means, by the way. I mean, again, I've been pro se for like 3 years now, so I have no idea what most of this means. Filed January 14, 2021, mother requested the exclusion of evidence about parental alienation or parental alienation syndrome because no expert witness would be testifying to those issues. And 2, character evidence about allegations involving mother that had already been litigated in the 2 prior custody cases under the doctrine of res judica. Again, there's a lot of Latin here. I don't know what any of this means, but I say res judica is not valid in this case. The hearing in San Diego was grossly compromised by a corrupt judge who was personal friends of the defendant's father and refused to allow me to call witnesses or present evidence. This judge forced a subordinate judge to recuse himself in a very suspicious fashion at the outset of the hearing. I've documented that already several times on my channel. In Mother's motion to change family therapist file on March 4, 2021, Mother sought approval to change the court-ordered family therapist from Britt Young to the LDADHD Center of Hawaii, an order requiring father attend individuals therapy, and an order requiring father to consent to communications between his prospective individual therapist, the family therapist, and the supervision monitor. The defendant has successfully hired several mental health professionals to support her claims. These are paid actors being paid by Mrs. Garcia to manipulate findings in her favor. We've never had a neutral mental health professional. The defendant has never had a mental health evaluation. Present at trial in person were father, who appeared pro se, mother, and mother's counsel, Shih and Emily Hills from the Legal Aid Society. Scumbags. Shih and Emily Hills are scumbags, aiding and abetting a known child abuser. I want to make that clear for the record here, and publicly as well. And I'm going to go ahead and link them to the Google search results for all of this, as I'm doing for anybody who's continuing to aid and abet a serial child abuser in the form of Jackleen Grace Garcia. After the conclusion of evidence on March 5th, 2021, the court issued an oral ruling and then issued the written order on June 22nd, following defendant's Hawaii Family Court Rule 58 submission on blah, 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 blah. On May 21st, father filed a notice of appeal to the Intermediate Court of Appeals. Father did not file a request for entry of findings of fact and conclusions of law. Therefore, on July 22nd, the court ordered the parties to submit proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law in the interest of presenting a proper record on appeal. I hope that my response covers me for that. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what I'm doing. I could really use help. Everett and Grace could really use help. They've been denied access to their father for 5 years. Just based on the say-so of their mother, who you'll hear more about shortly. The following findings of fact and conclusions of law are based on the court's full consideration of all relevant prior and current information pertaining to the best interest of the child, factors, blah, 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 including but not limited to the records and files of this case, the exhibits and evidence, the credible testimony and evidence adduced at trial, and the arguments of the parties. The court makes the following findings of fact and conclusions of law based upon the preponderance of evidence. Findings of fact. This just goes into, Everett and Grace are the children in the case. Everett was born in 2012. Grace was born in 2013. Children were born during the party's marriage. Father relocated to Hawaii from California. When the children moved here in 2018, he currently runs his own information technology business. I run two businesses. So it's not just the IT business. Once again, this is out of context. I have now moved from Oregon to California and from California to Hawaii, and now they want me to move again to a new state, severing all of my business connections, personal well-being, friendships, etc. I'm actually doing really great in Hawaii, professionally, personally, in every way, except in a court of law against Mrs. Garcia, which I've never been doing good in any state against her. So, it doesn't really help me to move to a new state. If anything, it's just starting all over again with new judges who don't know you, who aren't going to look at the facts, who don't care, and just want to get their paperwork from one side of the desk to the other. That seems to be the only thing that they're interested in at family court. Mother is the choir director at Pearl City Community Church. She remarried after the parties divorced and has a daughter, the children's half-sister, who's approximately 2 years old. Mother and the children relocated to Hawaii in 2018. Once again, this is grossly out of context. Mrs. Garcia has been fired or reassigned from every major employment she has ever had, excluding businesses owned by family or very part-time work, such as working once a week as a choir director at a church. I personally witnessed her have altercations with many business partners, employers, clients, customers, and any and all other business relationships, not only in our band, The Green Jacket, but also while running O'Drennan School of Irish Music, playing weddings in our duet, the Europa Duet, and also while she was employed for other music schools at Enjoy Hair Care, and of course as a secretary at Stoney's, a marijuana dispensary in Coos Bay, Oregon. Mrs. Garcia is not capable of stable, long-term, healthy relationships or employment. She has a variety of very serious personality disorders that I did not understand at all until after I began litigating against her in family court in Oregon in 2017. Procedural history. Parties were divorced in Oregon. In 2018, mother and children were living in San Diego, California. No mention of the fact that I had to move from Oregon to California. It's just like, that doesn't, they've already made a move state to state to state, but now we're just going to pretend like, it's just one move from state to state. He'll be fine. We can move again, right? That's the implication here. On August 23rd, 2018, Superior Court of California did issue a restraining order prohibiting father from having contact with mother except for communications regarding the children on a co-parenting app. The restraining order expires August 23rd, 2023. Once again, no context here. Judge Jim Wood, who granted that order, was a personal friend of the defendant's father. He did not allow father to call witnesses or present evidence. He also forced a subordinate judge to recuse himself in a very suspicious fashion at the outset of the trial. Father contends that the restraining order is invalid because it was issued by a corrupt judge. This court finds to the contrary that the restraining order is currently valid. By father's own admission, the restraining order was entered after a contested hearing in which both parties had the opportunity to present evidence, and father did not appeal the entry of the restraining order. This is patently false. Father was not allowed to present evidence or call witnesses. I made an audio recording confirming this. In that hearing in San Diego, the judge did not allow me to call witnesses, and he did not allow me to present evidence. And then he handed me a restraining order. It was all very odd and suspicious. And then I didn't understand any of what occurred until later I found out that he was good personal friends with Mrs. Garcia's father, Matthew Gehrisch, who is probably the one actively orchestrating all of the torture of his own grandchildren. What a sick, demented individual that guy is. Anyway, the restraining order included a child custody and visitation order, California custody order based on recommendations, blah, blah. After the parties underwent a social study, as relevant here, the order permitted the father to have supervised visitation. Again, barely. I mean, she stalled every supervised visitation that I've ever had, made it very difficult to find a supervisor who she would approve. When we finally did get a supervisor who she would approve, it would inevitably be like the most expensive one, and the one who definitely was aiding and abetting the serial child abuse that is parental alienation, which is the case of what's going on here against myself and my children. The defendant's father, good friend, gave the defendant everything she wanted, even coaching one of Mrs. Garcia's witnesses on the stand. In fact, Judge Jim Wood was coaching his buddy, Matt, on the stand at the hearing, coaching him. The judge was actively coaching one of the witnesses brought forth by Mrs. Garcia at that hearing. So, yeah, totally irrelevant hearing, I'm sure. Shortly thereafter, father filed his first motion and declaration for post-decree relief, seeking to vacate the California custody order. I've been fighting the defendant in court in 3 states now in an effort to have regular shared custody of Everett and Grace for their benefit, but also for mine. I'm a better person when I'm being an example for my children. That's true, actually. That's been one of the worst things about this whole thing for me personally is when I'm not around my kids, I'm just, I can do whatever I want and I don't really have much skin in the game, as it were. When I'm with my children, I'm like really highly focused on eating better, doing more physical activity, being more morally just and kind. And I'm just a much better person when I'm around my children because I want to be a good example for them. And so it just really kind of sucks that that's been taken away from me. On June 19th, 2019, this court denied father's first motion finding. I've been denied in every court in every state so far. Parties are still bound by the California custody order, and not anymore, actually. We have a new order here in this state, so that's false too. New court, new state, still sides with Mrs. Garcia, former secretary of a marijuana dispensary, and not Mr. Thornton, former IT director for 13 school districts. This is a shocking deprivation of the natural rights of both the children and their father. I said more in the initial rough draft, but I trimmed it out. It is really shocking that this bipolar sociopath can continue to win in court with no evidence against me whatsoever, other than her testimony, which is blatant lies frequently. And she, what has she done in her life? She ran a marijuana dispensary for a little while. That was her last job that I know of. Apparently now she's doing the church choir once a week. I mean, she can work once a week. That's about it. She's too bipolar. She's not capable of holding a job and being a good employee. I know because I worked with her personally for years. So I know this as a fact from personal direct observation. October 3rd, 2019, father filed his second motion declaration for post-decree relief, seeking joint custody, cancellation of child support order, and psychological evaluation of the mother. And mother filed her first motion and decree for post-relief on December 31st, 2019, seeking to limit communication between the parties and modify the visitation schedule regarding holidays. Both motions were set for hearing on January 3rd, 2020. My response, I invite any party go and read the Talking Parents app conversation. It's basically the plaintiff saying, stop violating court orders and let me see my children, over and over and over again. And the defendant responding, in the end, I'll see you in court. I'll withhold visitation for as long as is legally allowable unless we have an upcoming court date and I want to appear like I'm not violating the judge's orders. That seems to be the case. She lets me see the children about once a week for an hour when there's an upcoming court date. If there's no upcoming court date, she won't let me see them for months. 6 months in California, and then 8 months here just last year. And it's been going on for 5 years in 3 states, despite zero legal issue on the part of the plaintiff with any other party anywhere in the known world. Again, I'm the plaintiff in this case. Again, these are the actual facts in the case, not unabashed lies on the part of the defendant's counsel. After the evidentiary hearing on January 2020 and written order filed March 30th, the prior court denied father's second motion, ordering, among other things, that A, it was not in the best interest of the children to modify legal or physical custody. The parties could communicate via telephone for emergency purposes only, and father's request for mediation was denied as there is an active restraining order and mother did not consent to mediation. She's never consented to mediation. In fact, she filed for the restraining order and hit me with the restraining order at the first mediation. We were supposed to have a mediation at the courthouse in San Diego. She illegally served me the restraining order inside the courthouse there in San Diego. Once again, no repercussions for illegally serving me in San Diego. And again, never mediated ever. Refuses to mediate ever, just straight out, nope, will not mediate. Restraining order, court, anything, zero negotiations, zero offer negotiations, zero even offer of like, hey, this is what I want you to do to your kids. Nothing. No path forward to get visitation of Evergreen Grace of any kind. And that's how it's been for 5 years now. Once again, the father is offered no option other than to go to court, again in a third state, with a new lawyer who apparently is either a liar or has been fed a series of lies by the defendant and now believes them, with the result for Everett and Grace and their father being the same: further denied access and unneeded and wasteful abuse of litigation and ongoing parental alienation, as clearly documented in several court cases in several states now. The parties subsequently filed for the motion at issue here. Father filed his third motion and declaration for post-decree relief on August 25th, 2020, and mother filed her second motion and declaration for post-decree relief November 16th. Both motions were set for an evidentiary hearing on January 19th, 2021, and reset for further hearing on March 5th, 2021. More legal delays, more parental alienation. This is a documented pattern of intentional parental alienation by a bipolar narcissist with a history of serious psychological issues, including multiple DUIs. Unlike the plaintiff, I have no record of any kind anywhere against anybody. The only thing that I have in the world as a blemish on my record is all of this garbage with Mrs. Garcia, which again has all been perpetrated by her, 100%. If you read the first email that I sent her when we first divorced, I was like super nice. I'm like, you're kind, you're beautiful, you'll be fine. Don't hurt my visitation with the kids. You'll never want for anything: houses, cars, money, computers, anything you need. I'll make sure you have it. If you don't let me see the kids, not a penny. And she chose option B. Father voluntarily chose not to be represented by legal counsel during the proceedings, including during trial. He's represented himself completely during the pendency of this case, presenting his own evidence, including submitting exhibits, cross-examining witnesses, and making opening and closing arguments. Father ran out of money to hire lawyers at legal proceedings $300,000 ago. That's what I've spent. I've spent more than that. It's been closer to $500,000 I already spent fighting this monster who's actively perpetrating a horrendous form of abuse on my children. Spent almost $500,000 trying to stop her from harming my children in the way that she has been harming them. Parental alienation is super brutal. It's like one of the worst things you can do to a kid. And so after $300,000 in legal fees, that was it. I was like, I'm not spending any more money on lawyers. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not seeing the kids. Why keep putting money into a hole? I might as well just light it on fire. The defendant's counsel would frame the father as a negligent loser who just didn't bother to hire yet another parasitic lawyer, another blatant and arrogant misrepresentation of the facts by opposing counsel. The father is a hardworking, honest, and very poor man now because of the nefarious and continual abuse of his children by the defendant and her various paid accomplices, lawyers and mental health workers. He has desperately spent every dollar he has ever earned attempting to alleviate their suffering, and it's still not enough. 5 years later, some lawyer working for Legal Aid Society wants to paint the father as an illiterate, negligent ne'er-do-well, not a hardworking, honest small business owner that can never seem to quite stay on top of invoicing. It's true. I'm pretty good at my job, but I really suck at invoicing. I really need to hire somebody to do my invoicing for me, but so let me know if you want to do invoicing for thorntontext.com. I would love that. Mother was represented by counsel through the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii. Ray Shih and Emily Hills represented mother during the trial. Yeah, I mean, the mother has had a lawyer almost this entire time. Either her parents have paid for a lawyer or, mother's counsel has competently and zealously represented mother during these proceedings. Zealously, yeah, but competently. I don't understand how anybody can call it competent and zealous when you're actively aiding and abetting a serial child abuser. That's just like, oh yeah, you're competent at aiding somebody who's harming children. Good for you. Mother has had a series of dishonest and malevolent legal counsel. The greasy lawyer she had in San Diego was particularly egregious. These monstrous child abusers at the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii happen to be as malevolent, but not as capable, obviously, or they would not have provided the plaintiff with this ludicrous document to debunk pre-trial. Credibility for witnesses testified: Trina Yamada, Tracy Lewis, mother, father. Court finds Trina Yamada's testimony was credible. Ms. Yamada has a master's of social work from the University of Hawaii and is a licensed clinical social worker. Juris Doctorate from California Western School of Law. Mrs. Yamada has worked as a visitation supervisor for over 5 years. Prior to being a social worker, she was a caseworker at Child Welfare Services. She has 28 years of experience conducting custody studies. Ms. Yamada attended 2 supervised visits personally and coordinated the other visits. Ms. Yamada made the decision to end supervised visits after November 14, 2020. The court never discussed the relevance of Ms. Yamada's testimony. There barely was any. There was no wrongdoing found on the part of any party, although in the plaintiff's view, both Ms. Yamada and Mrs. Lewis' testimonies were both ill-informed and uneducated. It was clear neither of them are well-versed or cognizant of the language required for dealing with parental alienation, and indeed, the extreme form of parental alienation being engaged in by the defendant. They're just opportunists out to make money, like most of the divorce industrial complex, and these other professional maniacal losers, supervised visitation monitors, therapists, psychologists, lawyers, teachers, etc., that are profiting on the misery of children. Innocent children, and to the same point, innocent parents, grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts, other extended family, and friends that could prove to be valuable assets in the children's own professional futures when they inevitably enter the job market later in life. Once again, defendant's counsel is framing the narrative in a specific, erroneous, and malicious manner. Please review previous court records. There are 5 years worth now in 3 states. This is a pattern of malevolent abuse against innocent children by the defendant. The court finds that Tracy Lewis's testimony was credible. Blah, blah. I said just refer to my previous answer for answer 21. Yeah, it's not relevant. I mean, whether it's credible or not, it's not really relevant. They didn't say anything that had any relevance to the points being made in contention by either party. The court finds that father's testimony was credible in some respects, but not credible in others. Father loves the children and wants to have a relationship with them. However, father's disdain and blame of mother for his relationship with the children is misplaced. Yeah. The one who got a restraining order against me based on Facebook memes and won't let me see my children for 6 and 8 months at a time, blaming her for not allowing me to see my children, is clearly misplaced. Okay. Once again, no example of the father's testimony was specifically rebuked, if at all, only very roundly in order to create this fiction on the part of the defendant's counsel. No specifics are mentioned, and when specifics are mentioned, they are both false and misleading, as we will illustrate below. The court finds the mother's testimony was credible. Mother wants father to have a relationship with the children. The mother lies repeatedly, has now for 5 years, about almost everything, including her own malicious behavior, which is now part of a detailed court record in 3 states right now. It's not like there's not a record of all this in Oregon, in California, in Hawaii. There's a record of all this. So, I mean, why would anybody believe after 5 years of litigation, where all I've been saying is, please just let me see my children, that somehow I'm the problem? I mean, it's so weird that anybody would even think that that's even possible to believe at this point. Overall, mother was more credible witness than father. Nobody has ever stated this as a matter of fact and on the record, except in Oregon, where the judge was pervertedly eyeing Mrs. Garcia like a side of beef the entire time. That's true. The judge we had in Oregon and was like doing the up and down look on her the whole time. It was like, and just totally gave her everything she wanted. It was really disgusting. Obviously, to this day, the courts have sided with the mother. But remember that even in 2021, courts side with the mother at a rate of over 90% in custody battles. This is a textbook example wherein the father has no legal record with any other party other than through the malicious intent of the defendant and a variety of greasy professionals willing to profit on the misery of children and their alienated parents, the aforementioned lawyers, therapists, etc. The court finds that it is in the best interest of the children for mother to retain sole legal and physical custody of the children. Actually, it is a testimony of the plaintiff in this case that the children are already suffering all the symptoms of extreme parental alienation, that they have been very maliciously and malevolently harmed by their mother and other nefarious parties, often for profit, and that no court yet has adequately addressed this fact or attempted to redress grievances in any way or function, much to the chagrin of basic human decency, honestly. The court further finds that it is in the best interest of the children for father's visits with the children to remain supervised. Why? What record of violence, danger, or maliciousness anywhere in the universe, other than the false testimony of the defendant's defendant justifies this statement. Name one example. We're talking here about completely and utterly and intentionally destroying not one, but two father-child relationships. Please cite an example of evidence that this is justified other than the false testimony of the defendant. One corroborating fact outside of her or her immediate family's false testimony. It does not exist. Section 28, family violence. Mother has not engaged in family violence. Father testified that in 2018, when the parties lived in California, mother engaged in family violence by trying to hit him with her car during an incident at the children's school. Mother testified that father showed up at the children's school unannounced and that he jumped in front of her car as she was getting ready to drive away. She had to slam on the brakes to avoid hitting him. The school banned father from the school grounds following this incident. The court finds mother's explanation of this incident credible. My response: no court has found this credible. This is ludicrous. Why would the father jump in front of the car? He had already told the children he loved them, kissed them both on the forehead, and had gently closed the car door of the hybrid Lexus SUV he had purchased for the children to ride safely in while the parties were still married. In fact, the mother did lunge the vehicle at the father at sudden and high acceleration and then did slam on the brakes hard, terrifying not only the father but the children as well, whose faces were clearly visible to the father through the windshield of the black Lexus SUV. The image of their terrified faces will never leave my mind. That's true, actually. I'm 100% sure that all three of us suffered extreme PTSD from that incident. She slammed on the gas of the Lexus SUV that I bought for her. It's just like no good deed goes unpunished with a malevolent narcissist like Mrs. Garcia, which I can't wait for Mr. Garcia to discover this in a few years. I'm sure that he will. Yeah, it was really terrifying. She slammed on the gas and then slammed on the brakes like mere inches from me. And I looked up and I saw the kids' faces through the windshield in their car seats, like just absolutely terrified, realizing that they were about to be in a car that was about to run over their own father. The psychological damage that must have done to our kids is really enormous. And I've been talking about it since it occurred, and nobody seems to care or is interested or just doesn't believe me. I'm not really sure what the situation here is, but that's the only incidence of violence in this entire case. The only one that I know of. The domestic violence restraining order against the father is valid and does not expire until 2023. Correct. It does not expire until 2023, despite no finding of violence ever on the part of the father by a judge that was personal friends of the defendant's father and made a subordinate judge recuse himself for the defendant's advantage in a highly suspicious manner. No history of sexual or physical abuse of a child by a parent. No history of neglect or emotional abuse of a child by a parent. And I said, well, neglect is a broad topic. The plaintiff here notes that feeding the children fast food and putting them on iPads and allowing them to watch too much Netflix is a form of neglect that he did witness the defendant exhibit while they were still married. The plaintiff is highly focused on education, outdoor activities, organic vegetables and fruit, including produce grown with the children collaboratively, an effort the mother has failed to exhibit in as robust or meaningful fashion since divorce. Maybe this isn't strictly applicable to the term neglect, but it's certainly relevant and informative as to the intentions of both parties and the well-being of the children, and under whom's parenting the children would more benefit. Again, I bought the children a 24-acre farm with the intent of having them be able to graze and grow their own food, raise and grow their own animals, get into animal husbandry. We had a chicken coop. We were getting fresh eggs. We had millions of blackberries, raspberries, strawberries. I was planting fruit trees nonstop. The simple fact that all of that got torn away from them so that they could go with Mrs. Garcia from Navy base to Navy base on an iPad eating Wendy's is like, it's an absolute tragedy for the children. And here we are 5 years later, and the Wendy's Navy base, random Navy dude, paycheck lady gets custody of the kids. It's really pretty shocking to me. This is still going on. There's no history of emotional abuse of the children by either parent. This is truly incredible. To suggest that not allowing the children to see their own father for 6 months is not an emotional abuse is clearly false. To then realize that the defendant did perform the same egregious torture again later, but this time for more than 8 months, this time under the guise of COVID, even while the father was working at the Department of Health as the COVID-19 Surge Response Logistics Coordinator for the entire state of Hawaii. How could any compassionate or reasonable person not understand that this is tremendous emotional abuse? Yeah, she didn't let me see the kids for 6 months straight, which is why I went to Everett's school to see him at his school unannounced. Again, they're trying to paint me as like the bad guy here. Oh, the father came unannounced to the school. Yeah, she hadn't let me see the kids in 6 months. I was desperate to see the kids, let them know that I was okay, that I loved them, that I was trying to see them. I'm still desperate to try and let them know that I'm trying to see them. And I still can't, because that's one of the things you're not allowed to tell the kids during the supervised visit. You can't tell them, hey, I wish you were living with me. I wish we still lived on a farm. Hey, I wish we were still eating all organic fruits and vegetables every day. You can't tell them that at the supervised visit, because that would besmirch the good name of their mother, who is actively abusing them in one of the most horrendous fashions known to man. Father contends that mother has emotionally abused the children by alienating them from the father. Yes, he does. Father has testified several times now that this is an example of generational narcissistic abuse. The defendant was abused in a similar manner by her own parents, although the issue there was more infidelity and drug abuse. The effect on the defendant of losing access to a parent for a long time was therefore completely justified in the mind of the victim, Mrs. Garcia, who in this case is now the perpetrator of a very different and altogether more malicious and cruel example of parental alienation, namely the ongoing 5-year custody battle that has now raged across 3 states, and wherein the defendant wants to once again move the children, forcing them to sever all ties with community, friends, and of course their entire paternal family, as clearly evidenced by court documents in 3 states for more than 5 years now. The court finds that mother has not alienated father from the children. Mother testified that she has always encouraged the children to attend their visits with father, and she did not disparage father in front of the children. The court has never found this, because it has never been true. In fact, the defendant has violated every single order by every single court in one way, shape, or form over the last 5 years. She has done so intentionally and maliciously, and it is clearly evidenced in numerous court documents over the last half decade, as well as in the PAC documentation and in the conversation from the Talking Parents app. I present so much evidence of her denying me access to the children, stopping a visit, blocking the visit, canceling a visit, claiming she's going into labor when she's not going into labor. I mean, literally, she's done everything she can to not allow me to see my own children. And yet they're going to claim that she's like highly supportive of these visits with dad that just for some reason don't happen for 6 to 8 months, even though I'm literally 20 minutes away saying, please let me see the kids. Please let me see the kids. Please let me see the kids. Clearly, she's supportive of letting me see the kids. The visitation supervisors, Ms. Yamada and Ms. Lewis, never heard or observed anything that led them to believe that mother was influencing the children to turn them against father. Again, I said, see answer 21 above. They didn't seem to know anything about parental alienation, nothing. Ms. Yamada and Ms. Lewis observed interactions between the children and father, demonstrating the father did not listen to the children and did not respect their needs. E.g., father insisting on hugs with the children, even though they told him no, which explained the why the children sometimes asked to end supervised visits early. This is patently false, which is why no example has been cited. A father wants a hug from his own children? Is that an example of the father ignoring the needs of his children? What kind of backwards world do we live in wherein that is a reasonable suggestion? And again, please see answer 21 above. Yet they're trying to claim that because I wanted to hug my children, I was not paying attention. How did they phrase it? I was not respecting their needs. Wanting a hug from your own children is not respecting the child's needs. Yeah, a child needs a hug from their dad. That is their need. I was respecting their needs 100% by offering to hug them. Obviously. I mean, this is just disgusting. It's like I can't even hug my own children now because of this narcissistic abuse that they've been suffering under the hand of their mom. And they're going to claim that I'm not respecting their needs because I wanted a hug. It's just like, who anywhere would believe this? Who anywhere would believe any of this? This is just absolutely shocking. Mother has a positive relationship with the children. Narcissistic abusers in cases of parental alienation usually do. This is a textbook example. Mrs. Garcia loves her own mother in the same harmful and self-destructive way, despite years of abuse by her own mother. This is the pattern of enmeshment exhibited both by Mrs. Garcia and her own mother, and now our children and Mrs. Garcia. Again, this is a textbook example of the Stockholm Syndrome style mental abuse that is parental alienation. Father's relationship with the children is strained. This is also always fundamentally true in most examples of extreme parental alienation. Father has attempted to provide documentation of this to several courts now. Yet what happens in parental alienation is the kids usually end up hating the parent who's not there. Part of their heart is missing when they don't have access to a parent. They are deeply, deeply hurt, and they hate the parent who's not there. Even if it's not that parent's fault, they still hate that parent until they get a little bit older, realize, holy shit, this was completely the alienating parent's fault. And then they usually flip and then hate the parent that was alienating the good parent, in this case, me, and continue and try to repair the relationship with the parent who had been previously alienated. But we're talking about decades of mental health work and abuse that all of us are going to have to go through because of the actions of Mrs. Garcia. And she's going to end up with no kids. The kids are going to actively despise her when they realize the truth about what occurred here. That's what happens in most of these cases of parental alienation. Go look up the studies yourself. I've presented them to court several times. All right, this has gone on for like 35 minutes, and I mean we're on page 19, and this is a 56-page document. So this is just I just want to put this out there as public record. I'm going to post the document itself as public record as well. Here, in fact, I'll just go ahead and scroll through it so anybody can read it if they want. I mean, you can screen pause and capture any of these shots for the whole document. This is my life now. You know, it's like I work and I try to make money and I try to see the kids. But honestly, I spend almost every minute of every waking hour fighting these greasy lawyers, these greasy mental health professionals that are just trying to collect a paycheck based on the misery of children. It's just unreal, you know, and it's not just me either. You know, I'm sending these documents to my mom, to my dad, to other friends to review, to, you know, to say, hey, maybe rephrase this. Hey, maybe it's just like, it's a never ending cycle of pain and just endless paperwork, bureaucratic nightmare. And for what? You know, because I filed for divorce when Mrs. Garcia started sleeping with Navy guy number 1. She's now on Navy guy number 4. And again, I wouldn't care that much about the fact that there's Navy guy 1, 2, 3, and 4, except for she introduced all of them to the children, which again, that is not recommended by therapists ever. I mean, the fact that they saw their mom riding this carousel of Navy dudes before finally settling down with Mr. Garcia is like, that's horrendous. That's horrendous. And I would not have done that. If I was dating 7 or 8 different women, I would not have introduced the kids to any of them until one was like, you know, okay, we've been together 6 months. You can meet this one now. But that's just not how she operates, because she's lazy and she can't hold a job. And she's really just a really, really messed up, horrendous person, which I've been claiming since we've ended up in court for 5 years. And again, this entire time I've held a job, a steady job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. I have to hold 2 or 3 jobs because at any moment I might have to quit a job because California Child Support Services, Hawaii Child Support Services, Oregon Child Support Services might come and garnish up to 95% of my wages. So I'm just always holding 2 or 3 jobs, running my own company, running a band, just always hot potato from one foot to the other, trying to find a way for myself to make money without her earning 1 penny, based on the fact that she's continuing to abuse my children and my parents too. I mean, it's really sad for my parents. They're getting older. They haven't seen their grandkids in 6 years. It's just like, it sucks. It sucks. And none of us did anything to deserve this. Mrs. Garcia is garbage. She's just Jackleen Grace Garcia, nee Gehrisch, because I'm sure at some point she'll be Gehrisch again. I'm sure she's going to screw it up with Mr. Garcia at some point, or maybe he's going to screw it up. I've heard through the grapevine, he likes to cheat on his ladies too. So one of the 2 of them is definitely going to cheat on each other at some point, put each other through hell, probably end up divorced. And they're going to be right back where I am now. And hopefully at that point, she's going to be too poor and beat down to continue to abuse the children of me in the manner that she has been for the last 5 years. Yeah. And again, you know, if anybody has any ideas on how I can end the abuse of my children, I am all ears. I'm like Spock and Yoda and a Ferengi combined. I mean, I am all ears. If you have any idea on how I can just get to see my children, I am all ears. I've been fighting this depraved, promiscuous, drug addict sociopath in 3 states for 5 years now. And I don't understand how people like her can live with themselves, honestly. It's just, To abuse your own children in this manner is really despicable and disgusting. And to her parents, Matthew and Regina Gehrisch, you people are so disgusting and depraved that you would do this to all of your grandchildren, make all of your grandchildren grow up without a dad, just proves how truly misandrous and disgusting you are. And Matt, what a cuckold piece of garbage you are, allowing Regina to perpetrate this abuse on your grandchildren, on your children, on your sons-in-law or ex-sons-in-law. How do you sleep with yourself at night? How do you live with yourself at night? You are just garbage. To manipulate the court system and actually have your friend force a lower subordinate judge to recuse himself, I am just so disgusted by you on every level, just every level. I mean, I can't think of a more pathetic, depraved, sorry excuse for masculinity than Matt Gehrisch. And the fact that my kids have more access to him than they do to me is like the most maddening and despicable and disgusting thing I can possibly think of. He is not a man in any way, shape, or form. And it is absolutely disgusting the way he lets these bipolar narcissist women run his life. And that's his wife and all three of his daughters, Rhonda, Jenny, and Jackleen. And I'm going to submit all this onto the internet and Google link it all to everything else and put hidden links on websites and do everything that I do to make sure that that entire family will be a digital pariah for all time, because you have not allowed me to see my own children for 5 years. So you will be a Google and every other search engine digital pariah for all time. All right, Internet fam, love you all. Hope you had a beautiful day. Again, if you have any ideas on how to stop the abuse of my children, I'm all ears. I've been fighting in courts for so long now. I'm still fighting in court. We have supposedly a mediation day on the 28th, but we can't really mediate because of the restraining order. And of course, she won't mediate. She'll just be like, oh no, there's no offer made. There will be no offer made for me to get visitation with the children. I'm predicting this. Let's see if I'm right. Who wants to bet me? Somebody want to bet me $100 that they'll be like, oh no, he can see his kids now. They will not allow that. They will not allow that. The mediation is coming up later this month, a few days from now. I've submitted this document. I have a huge letter that I have to submit to the judge who's doing the mediation. Any idea that anybody has that can end the abuse of my children that is parental alienation, I'm all ears. I am all ears. I have no criminal record of any kind other than parking tickets. I think I had a speeding ticket in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, that was like the last legal thing that I have with anybody besides the Gehrisch family. It's hard to use the word family when we're talking about a collective of narcissistic abusers who are just literally psychos. I mean, there was a time when Aunt Jenny pulled a knife on somebody at a family gathering. I mean, this is just like, these people are really, really depraved. I mean, they've done the same thing, not just to me, but to this other guy too, Matt Herm. Matt Herm, he's a really good guy. He's not perfect. I mean, like everybody, he's got his problems or whatever, but he's a really, really sweet guy. Anybody who knows Matt Herm knows he's a really, really nice guy. He's never harmed anybody. He has no real criminal record. I think he has like a marijuana conviction or something. He's just a really nice guy. And they haven't let him see his kid at all for years now. And Matt, bro, I'm so sorry, bro. Matt Herm, I'm so sorry that they were even more successful in harming you in this way. Sucks, bro. You didn't deserve it. Anyway, Internet fam, again, all ears. If you got any idea on how to end the abuse of my children, I am all ears. Any option. I've got about $20,000 that I'm willing to spend on any concrete manner that will end the parental alienation by Mrs. Garcia. $20,000. So if you'd like to earn that $20,000 with some idea that's a bulletproof way to ensure that I get a shared custody agreement without the restraining order, etc., I am all ears. 20 grand. Yours instantly. Boom. Have it. Thanks, Internet fam. Have a great day.